Ball State University is a liberal arts college with a set university core curriculum, or a UCC. The UCC of Ball State consists of English, math, science, history, PFW, humanities, and a fine arts. Also, depending on your degree, you could have a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor's of Science. A Bachelor of Arts could require you to take a foreign language class. And with most degrees, they require a GPA of 2.0 or a C+ grade average. Today's study, however, is only consisting of the four main UCC, which are English, history, math, and science. Today's question is, are these classes needed, valuable, and/or need an update on our campus at Ball State University? To decide, our research team took anonymous surveys across campus, and we did in-person interviews with on-campus professors to ask their opinion about these courses.
Before we move on to the collected data and the interviews, I'd like to share Sam Looney's and the research team's predictions to what will happen.
I expected the survey results to mainly lean from those that we surveyed, which were students, TAs, professors, and graduated students, former students of the university, well, former students in general, not necessarily from Ball State. I expected that the students, TAs, and former students would have leaned into the no, these UCC courses are not necessary. The courses such as math, history, science, and English were not necessary, just because I, as a student, have felt a general disdain, not me personally, but I've seen a general disdain for these courses. And I thought that would translate over into being a teacher's assistant or even a graduate student, and also as a graduated student. I thought that's just how it would play out. Because you were taught, or supposedly taught all of this, most of this information in high school. I know not all high schools are equal, but I thought that a lot of students would say, like, hey, I was taught this in high school, why do I need to be taught it again? Why am I paying money for this?
Let's begin. The surveys across campus came back with 129 responses from students, TAs, professors, and just anybody willing to take the survey. Out of the plethora of the responses, 39.5% of the people that responded said yes, the UCC is needed. 3% of the people said maybe, I could see a possible use for these courses. And 27.2% of the people said no, I do not see a point for the UCC at Ball State University. The people that said yes, the classes are needed or valuable, had a consistent reasoning to think that it made you a more well-rounded student, it made it less of a hassle to deal with major classes, and saw a total use for the classes. The maybes of the group believed that they could see a value in the classes, however, it was either too expensive, too much of a workload, or they do not see a value in these particular classes, however, they still see a value in the rest of the UCC. For the people that said no, they believe that the classes, they do not see it as valuable, they see it as they took plenty of Common Core in high school, and or they only want to focus on their major classes only.
Before moving on to the interviews, the results were evenly split, so showing the short answer responses can visually show the opinion of the UCC based in Ball State. These few anonymous responses represent the majority of the replies based on the survey and their decisions. The survey also helped decide which UCC is seen as more useful and or more important to them. Based on the responses, English is the most important, followed by science, then history, and math labeled as the least used UCC. Now, Let's move on to the interviews with Dr. Watkins and R.A. Andy Newman to see what they have to say about the UCC.
Okay.
Do you think the 4 major common core subjects are necessary for a post-secondary education?
What are the 4 subjects again?
The 4 subjects are math, English, science, and history.
I would say yeah, probably those 4, at least in general, are just kind of what make up like a normal, I guess, Western education. If you look back in high school, it's the same 4 subjects throughout all 4 years. I think that gives you like a pretty well-rounded, just kind of education at least, that at least gives somebody a little bit of something in every single area that kind of just encompasses something like that. And if you've made it into college, I mean, those are all 4 subjects that you should be able to do pretty well. And I mean, I would like to get at least a little bit of each. So I think that being forced to do all 4 of them is probably a good idea, just for education's sake.
I do, and so obviously I'm a STEM person, right? And
course.
so I think that, math is important, I think science is important, and I think the arts are important. What I don't know as much is, I know that we have like fine arts versus humanities, and so someone probably that's more well versed in those areas could probably tell you whether or not we need like a distinct fine arts and humanities category, or whether or not those could be combined. But I do think it's important in general just for students to have, kind of a well-rounded education where, I think it's, different people have different philosophies, right? And so like for me, like a 4-year institution like Ball State, I think it's important for students to kind of be exposed to lots of different things. I don't consider us a trade school where you're just here to try to learn how to, for you, a math teaching major, like you're not just here to learn how to become a math teacher, but I feel like that you're here to learn how to become a responsible citizen. And even though I don't necessarily love the humanities and fine arts, so actually I do, but as much as maybe, math, I still think it's important for me to, know about the history, right? And I think it's important for me to know, and be able to appreciate, art. And so like I took an art history class, and I took a lot of humanities courses, and didn't always love them, but I felt like that it helped make me a more well-rounded person, where at least, when I'm having conversations with people, I understand what they're talking about, and I understand the references that they're making, those kind of things. So to me, I may be going way off your question, but I do think that there's value in all the different areas. Obviously, math and science in particular, you're going to be using those in different capacities, throughout your life. And, a lot of people enjoy the arts and humanities. And so again, I just think I can understand why we have all these different areas. And I guess the only one that I don't know as much about is whether or not, it makes sense, if you were to ask me, would there be a problem having 3 areas where we have, math, science, and, fine arts and humanities combined? I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I'm sure maybe somebody in arts and humanities would say, well, I don't have a problem with all.
Do you think the University Common Core should be changed? And if you do, what do you think it should be changed to?
I think that there are some core requirements, but beyond those, just like 4 classes, the history, the science, the math, and the English, that are probably unnecessary. Like the physical, the PFW classes kind of just don't make a whole lot of sense to me. Public speaking, I guess it's a good skill to have, but at least the way that they do it just kind of seemed unnecessary. So I think that I would like them to kind of like maybe trim back some of the requirements in those classes, but having a core curriculum is probably a good idea.
Possibly. I don't know exactly. I know there's been a lot of talk about making changes and kind of what that might look like, and it's tricky, right? If we're talking about like logistically, it's tricky because any small changes that we make to the UCC, to the core, is going to drastically affect things like staffing, right? And so that might not be as important to you, but if we decide that for instance, that maybe we don't need to have a math or a quantitative reasoning requirement anymore, we'll do away with that. Well, we would also then lose a lot of staff that we have and a lot of faculty members that we have in the department. And so, but for me, as a faculty member, that's something that we have to think about, right? If we combine, humanities and fine arts and say you only have to have one course instead of, one in each area, I mean, that's going to affect, like staffing type issues. And I'm not saying that that should be the main concern, but it definitely is a concern, right? That we are talking about, hiring and firing decisions when it comes to these things. So I think we have to be careful about it. But I think we do want to do what's in the best interest of students. And so, could it be reworked? I mean, I think so. I mean, the way the core is set up here is different than, what I experienced as an undergrad. And so, I was required to take 2 history courses, 2 English courses, 2 humanities courses, and then a lot of other things. And so I probably even had more kind of arts and humanities type classes than we require here. And so like I said, I mean, I think there definitely are lots of other models that we can look at. I mean, I don't know all of the real nitty-gritty details of UCC because that's not something that I've spent a lot of time dealing with. But like I said, I do know that there's been talk about making some changes, and I understand concerns on the faculty side. What's that going to look like if we do those changes? But ultimately, I think that we should be looking at kind of what our peer institutions are doing, and then maybe use that to kind of help us decide kind of what makes sense. But in general, I do like the idea of kind of asking students to take a variety of courses. And what I don't understand as much as like Tier 1 makes sense to me. What I don't understand quite as much is like exactly how Tier 2 is set up and how some of the courses that are in Tier 2, how those were decided, and I don't know, it seems like it gets a little messy after you get out of Tier 1. Seems to be pretty clear. Pick one course in each of these areas, and these areas are pretty well defined areas. In Tier 2, they kind of start merging things together, and you see lots of different courses. That's where maybe I feel like we should look a little closer to see.
Do you think students should place more value on the UCC?
I don't know if students necessarily place more value on it. I mean, for some people, they're just coming here to get an education in a specific field in which they want to go into. So putting a lot of time and effort into math or science isn't necessarily something that they have to do, but I think it's something that they should do. But putting more value into it in comparison to what you're actually here for doesn't make any sense.
Probably. I mean, I would say students probably in general. It's hard, right? I mean, if you're taking a class and it's not in your major, I think, sometimes it's harder to appreciate it like in the moment, right? I mean, even for me, so I put off, like I didn't love taking humanities courses, and so we were supposed to take 2 humanities courses our sophomore year, and it was a lot of like reading. I mean, they were 2 separate, like you didn't have a list of like, choose one of these humanities. Like everyone took the same 2. One was more kind of like kind of old texts, and one was a little bit more modern. And so I put off one of those until my senior year, and I actually do think that I appreciated it a little bit more toward the end of my program than maybe if I would have taken it my sophomore year. And I could just tell, like, the conversations we were having in there, a lot of them were very surface level a lot of times, and I could understand that a lot of the students in the class really were, just kind of doing what they needed to get by. And I get it. Like I said, I mean, a lot of the people in the class, including me, were not really that interested in the humanities. But being a senior, I think I appreciated it a little bit more, and I had a chance to kind of think about my overall like academic career, and I don't know, I almost wonder. So we always push everyone to do all their gen eds at the beginning, but maybe putting some of them off a little bit later. I think there are some positive things. That one, you don't have 4 math classes in one semester, but also I think sometimes it takes a little while to get like out of the high school mindset and into like the college mindset, that it's not just about your grades, but also about like seeing what you can absorb and learn, and checking out new things. Maybe I did that a little bit better toward the end than the beginning. But I mean, I always think that students could put in more time and effort in their classes. I mean, I know there's a lot of things pulling you in different directions. A lot of times, a lot of people have to work, and that can't be helped, or they just have a lot of other responsibilities beyond school. But I mean, I could even say that in math. I mean, I could definitely tell in my math courses that even our majors, like some of them are doing what they need to do to get by on the course, and others are trying to see what they can actually get out of it, and like really trying, a lot of times go above and beyond what I ask them to do, because they really are interested in learning more about whatever we're talking about, or really focused on more than just like getting by or getting the grade, but actually care about trying to learn something, right, and take something with them. And So I would say, yes, I think students could probably benefit. Most students could probably put in more effort and maybe try to shift their focus a little bit more from always being more worried about like what grade are they going to get on an assignment or what grade are they going to get in the class, and really about like what can I take away from this class. Because I mean, if you're there to learn and you're excited about it and you really put in effort, you're probably going to do okay in the class. So, at least for my classes, that's what I
And finally, do you think it would be sufficient for students to get all their common subjects knowledge from high school, or do you think they should learn it from college as well?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I got a lot of my Common Core stuff done in high school, but it was on the college level. So if you get a college class it's a college level class that you take in high school, then I think that it should completely transfer over to college as well. But I think if you haven't had that experience on the college level, well, not in high school, then you probably should on the college level as well.
Okay.
I would probably say no. And the reason that I would say no is, one, kind of touched on a little bit. Like, I don't know that high school students a lot of times are really prepared, like, are at a place where they can really, kind of take a step back and kind of look at the bigger picture. And I don't know, like, I think there's a maturity level in college that develops that maybe that's a better place for some of these. Also, I worry, like, if we only focused, if we put everything in high school and then all you do is focus on, math. I mean, I don't know how exciting it would be to take 4 or 5 math classes, every single semester. I mean, to me, I enjoyed, I double majored in math and Spanish. I absolutely loved, like, taking a couple of math classes and a couple of Spanish classes every semester. It was very different things, and if I got bogged down in the math, I could go over and work on my Spanish for a while, and vice versa. And like I liked having a variety, and so I do worry that sometimes we have students transfer here with most of. So this is not exactly answering your question, but we have students that transfer here with most of their gen ed credit and their UCC done, and so they end up just having to take tons of classes for the major, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, and it can just it can be a lot, right? And it's a lot of the same type of thing where some students 4 or 5 math classes a semester is pretty rough, even if some of them are methods and some are cognitive courses. It's still a lot. So I worry about that, just like I worry about transfer students. Like, I would worry that if we push students to take a lot of their UCC courses in high school, that would leave a lot of of the content classes they would have to take, or their major classes. I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of jumbles, right? Like, right now we're working on a program to allow students to do a lot of their first year classes in high school so that they can then finish a math teaching major in 3 years. But it's still going to be a lot, right? Because even if they take a whole year worth of classes in high school, I mean, that's a lot of stuff packed in, especially toward the end, because there's only so much math they could take in high school. So again, we're eliminating some of those courses that would maybe, give a little bit of relief in a semester where you're taking a whole lot of math. Those classes have already been completed, and so you're just stacking all this math in, and so it can be tough, and so I guess that's maybe a concern that I would have beyond, I guess maturity would be one, but also just, if you remove all the UCC courses, even if students can finish in a faster period of time, like, do students really want to take that many courses in their major at the same semester? And I think a lot of times it's nice to spread those things out. And even like things like calculus, there's a couple of classes that you kind of need to take. So you really, it's not feasible for most math majors to take a whole lot of math classes at the very beginning, because they need to get through, the calculus sequence, and discrete and linear, and so that takes a little bit of time before you can really kind of start stacking up.
With a survey sent across campus, and an interview with a Ball State University professor, and an interview with the Ball State University RA, our research team has concluded that majority of campus agrees, yes, that UCC is needed and is useful to the students at Ball State. However, it would not hurt to give it an update. We've also concluded that the student can have a more well-rounded education if they are willing to learn and retain the information. This is only on their part, and if they view it as valuable. Now, let's check in on Sam and see what he thinks about the information we've just learned.
The results of the survey and the data that we've collected actually surprised me because, like I said, I thought students and those who have graduated would lean towards no, they're not necessarily, well, not necessarily, why am I paying for this? But a lot of people in the question of, do you think that these courses make good use of your time, said yes. The majority of people said yes. The minority of people said no, and there was a split in the maybe answer, which gives us some ambiguity. It's not concise, but yes and no give me a lot of it gave me a lot of surprise, just because the amount of people, which consisted of both graduated former students and current students, said yes, these are necessary, whether it be for life experience or because you may not have learned this in high school.